Hi, everyone. This is bonus content on Rainworld. First and foremost, before I do anything else, thank you to everybody who put a lot of comments and was talking about, like, what does it mean, like, the end of Saint? Talking about what they think the ending means, how it's different than other endings, who the Saint really is, what the Saint represents. And I especially thank everyone who, like, let me know, okay, if you were to ascend Pebbles and not Moon, or Moon and not Pebbles, or both together, this is what happens. I appreciate it because then I don't have to, like, go and scour the wikis and find it myself. So, and because I know it does take time to do that, and I appreciate you for doing that. That being said, though, a lot of the comments have been really good about telling me, this is what you should be knowing up to this point. This is what you forgot, because I forget a ton of things, especially since I've got like 4 or 5 different playthroughs all going at the same time sometimes. And I've been trying to do better about not doing that. Now, but with all of that out of the way, let's get to why people are probably here, and maybe not. Maybe you're not here to hear my opinion on what the ending of the Saint playthrough is, and the ending of essentially what is Rainworld. So, everyone was reminding me again what the mission of the iterators were. And the mission of the iterators is permadeath. Not like for them because they're robots and eventually they collapse like Moon did, 5 Pebbles did. If they are in a weird situation, and I think it's because they're not organic, but they're in a weird situation where they aren't affected by the cycles in the same way. Time still moves weird for them, it seems like. But they aren't held to this idea that these cycles are going to infinitely continue and that everything begins as it starts and starts as it begins. And I think originally the iterators were supposed to be designed as simple machines that were supposed to better their everyday lives, take care of everything. I think this was going to be one of those utopias where people were free to do creative stuff, like focus on the arts and the music and really get down to brass tacks on, like, the reality of science is really push the limits of what they know. And the machines were going to handle all of the, like, heavy lifting, all the manual labor, and all of their needs would be taken care of. I think that's what it was going to happen. But in order to power these massive machines, so large that you have cities on top of them, they had to come up with a power source to do it. And it broke the laws of nature. And they didn't realize that one of the huge repercussions of that is that time would then, once you break, I have this theory that if you break one law of nature, all the laws of nature get thrown out the window. And I think that's sort of what they're going for too, which is kind of interesting. But what that means is that they, by accident, force themselves into the cycles. And I think that's sort of kind of suggested. And even from what I have been seeing in the comments, I think people would agree with me. I think they would agree that what happened was a complete accident. And eventually people got stuck in these cycles. And then they created the iterators in order to fix that problem. So they created a problem, created a solution to fix that problem, which then created more problems. Is essentially what kind of happened, and it was a huge domino effect. Eventually, the Ancient Ones either all died or they left. Either physically left or they all died. Or at least the ones that were remaining died. And the few who are left over are now echoes, the ones that we see. And that people were saying that, I don't know if it's necessarily just a theory or if it's a fact, that the echoes are only there because they have this connection to this world. They refuse to leave because they have things left undone. Kind of like ghosts. The mythos of ghosts. This could be a very long video if I'm not careful, so I don't want to go too much into detail about everything. There's a few things that everyone seems to agree on in the comments. The Saint is essentially a gift for the iterators, because the iterators are trying to solve the issue of these cycles. And the Saint is permadeath. It is walking permadeath, because that's what Ascension is. Ascension is moving beyond this plane of existence into another one. And since this one is stuck in a continuous loop, the only way to get out of the continuous loop is just to be removed from it and stuck into another world. That seems to be a little bit more organic, seems to be Well, no, it's spiritual, but you know what I mean. It moves. Time moves relatively normal there. Or I guess it's not broken like this world is, the Rainworld is. And everyone agrees that Saint has the ability to do that for people. And this probably isn't brand new. Again, I haven't looked at any of the wikis. I'm sure other people have hypothesized, or they've posed this same hypothesis. I'm sure other people have thought the same thinky that I thought. Is kind of what I'm trying to say. And what I think is, and I always forget her name, but I think it's seven. Tongue twister. 7 silver straws. Sliver of straws. It's sliver of straws. For some reason, because of 5 pebbles, I always want to put 7 in front of it. I think they purposely built the Saint. We know that all the other iterators were toying around with genetically modifying the slugcats. I think Sliver of Straws, a lot like Moon and 5 Pebbles, was zapping slugcats' brains. And they just so happened to zap the Saint's brain. They shocked its brain, and it hit something in there and rewired the whole thing so they could essentially become this all-powerful being who could ascend beyond. And I think what probably happened, and this, I'm going to take some artistic liberties right here. Imagine this with me. This is probably 100% not true because this is my own fan fiction. But I think what happened was in the moment that Sliver of Straw zapped the Saint and tried to give them the gift of knowledge, they probably hit something vital. The Saint flatlined. In that moment that the Saint flatlined, similar to what was kind of going on in the beginning. And this is why I think this is the thing. Similar to what happened in the beginning, the Saint died, went to Nirvana. Because the Saint did not want to leave, the Saint fought back. And they zapped the Void Worm. Because I believe that the Void Worm is, it's like if you think of it more like the River of Styx. So you have like the boat that takes you where you're supposed to go, to the underworld. The Void Worms do that. I think they sort you into your personal little heaven or your personal little nirvana. And I think the Saint fought back, and because of that, they were left adrift. So they started to echo. But I think what happened was because of whatever Sliver of Straws did, I think the Saint was stuck and couldn't echo completely. Not into like the ancient one echo, and just popped back in as a little slugcat. But they had all of the previous knowledge they had before. So they fought hard to try to earn maximum karma, because that was their whole deal. I think Sliver of Straws purposely found a slugcat who wanted maximum karma and was fighting tooth and nail for maximum karma, taught them how to get there, zapped their brain, trying to give them the gift of knowledge. They died. And then they came back. And when they came back, I think they probably were in a situation where I can't really see it playing out any other way than something was going to like devour them, their dead body or whatever. Sliver of Straws noticed this. And before they could like react or whatever, or probably even didn't care because, oh, you know, the slugcat's dead. There's nothing I can do. The slugcat woke up and shot it with the ascension, and it was dead. And the body didn't disappear. It didn't go away, and it didn't recycle. It was just a dead corpse at that point. And Sliver realized this is it. This is the only way to get out of this. This slugcat here is the nuke. This is the button that you push and all things can go away. We can move past this cycle. So they fired off the triple affirmative. Now, Sliver of Straws was in a bit of a conundrum. Because if you think about it, if Sliver of Straws fires off the triple affirmative and then is there to answer all of the questions about the triple affirmative, it's not good. Because the only way people can believe that the triple affirmative is right, that this isn't a mistake, is if Sliver of Straws is gone. She has to prove it by disappearing. So what happened was she had the slugcat ascend her right after she fired off the triple affirmative, because what that means is it's essentially saying, hey, this works. Not only does it work, I can prove it. And I'll just be gone. You know what I'm saying? Like, they do not think that the slugcats are worth any of their time, besides being purpose-built creatures and deliverers of messages. So they're slow, and it takes time. All of that happens later, after Sliver of Straws. So it takes time for them to realize that these slugcats are actually helpful, are actually beneficial for them, and that they can live symbiotically with them. They would have never thought to weaponize them, or that one slugcat could hold the power. Now, here's the interesting thing. So, not only do I think she weaponized this slugcat by accident, probably. She was playing around, and this just so happened to work. I think she also sent it on a mission. The Saint's mission is to ascend all things. And I think, like, some of the people were pointing out some of the symbolism. Like, the Saint has the 3 dots on their head, which signifies the triple affirmative. Like, I like that. That is good. That's great symbolism. That's exactly what this game would do. It's exactly what this game would do. Similar to any other fan fictions or, like, beliefs about this, I don't know what's true and what's not. But what I will say is that so far that makes logical sense to me. Up to this point, everyone has sort of kind of agreed in the comments about it, and I've agreed with everyone up to that point. Here's where I deviate. The Rubicon, from what I understand, let me look up what the Rubicon is officially. Okay, there are 2 definitions for Rubicon. The first I don't think applies here. The first is an act of winning a game against an opponent in which the score of the losers is added to the winners. I don't understand how that would work here. I also didn't know that that was the actual definition of it. I know that there is a slang definition of Rubicon in which there are the Rubicon that I've heard of before, and this is probably just because of other games, is like a device or a place that holds things, and in particular knowledge. And I think I stated that in the last video, but I don't think this applies here. I think the other definition of Rubicon is actually the one that they're using here. So according to Merriam-Webster's dictionary.com, something like that, it says that a Rubicon is a bounding or limiting line, especially one that when crossed commits a person irrevocably. This is the line. This is the line drawn in the sand. Once you're beyond it, you're done. This is your ascension. This is you moving on. So that actually makes so much sense when you think about what the Saint is and their goal. And that also makes sense why some of the most aggressive creatures are there. I actually think that the Rubicon is the purgatory of this world. I think that the Saint ascends all the creatures and that they get stuck there. And the reason that they're stuck there and why only the most aggressive creatures are there, because people said in the comments, and I don't disagree with you. I just kept thinking to myself, is it that simple? Is it as simple as that the Rubicon is a place trying to keep the Saint out? Because the Saint is unnatural and shouldn't be there. They've ascended so many times. They should not belong here. And the reason I don't think that's true, and again, I'm not disagreeing with you. It could 100% be true. I'm just saying that I have a different take on it because when I think about it, and if you ascend 5 pebbles, if you ascend Moon, and you die, that's what people were saying. If you ascend those 2 and you die, it doesn't matter. They're still not in the cycles. Which proves the fact that the Saint can remove things from the continuous cycle. So what about all the animals that you've been killing along the way? Are they just dead? Are they just not there anymore? No, that's not what it is. That would be too simple. What it is the Saint is ascending them. They are being shoved into the Rubicon. They're being dropped in the same way that 5 pebbles and Moon would both be in, what did they call it? The puppet theater? I think that area, that little box that they sit in, I think people called it the puppet theater. I'm going to call it the puppet theater. That's in the Rubicon. That is their ascension. You've shoved them into ascension. I think the Saint can only get creatures so far, and then they have to choose to pass on to the other side, to completely ascend, which means that they have to move through the Rubicon. And I think that's why that it is there. It is a physical space that is a line in the sand that once you pass through it, you've passed into ascension, and that fits so well with the definition of it. So I think that the Saint doesn't force anything into ascension. I think that the Saint gives things the opportunity to ascend by dropping them into this area. And in this area, a lot of the most aggressive creatures that are kind of tied to the physical world are still there. And even the karma gatekeepers or whatever, the ones that lock everything down. I don't know what those things are called, but I don't think they want to move on, because they seem like religious zealots. I think that they feel that their job is to either test creatures or hold them in their purgatory. So I think, if anything, where in all the other slugcats we've kind of just been allowed to pass through, I think because of Saint's mission, I think those beings are trying to stop the Saint, because the Saint is unnatural. They know that this isn't the first time and this won't be the last time that they're passing through purgatory, and they shouldn't be able to do that. And I think they enforce the laws of the world, but they don't try to lock anything else. If anything else wants to move on and ascend and pass through the Rubicon on their way, then they can. So I think the Saint is the deliverer of souls. And I think that they've been purposely built by a sliver of straws and sent out on this mission. And that also explains why a lot of the other iterators are disappearing and the world is growing cold. Because I kept thinking, one or two iterators out of the thousands of iterators in this area would not be enough to plummet this world into the ice age that it's starting to become. Maybe localized snowstorms, fine, I get it. But the vast snowstorms that we were seeing at different points in the game never made sense to me. It just did not compute. And for the longest time, I didn't understand why that was happening. Maybe, and I just kind of chalked it up to, oh, this is just a gameplay mechanic. How stupid am I to think that this game of all games would just have a simple gameplay mechanic? That is dumb, and I feel bad about it. I do. There's a lot of times I say I should feel bad about it. This time I shouldn't feel bad about it, but I do feel bad because they didn't come out and say it. But I should have pieced that together. I feel bad because I wasn't giving them enough credit. They thought everything out. What made me think that this is the one time they didn't? Regardless, I think what this all boils down to is that the Saint has been going around and removing the other iterators, and that's why the whole world is being plunged into an ice age. And the Saint's job is to go and find and ascend all of the iterators. And not just the iterators. I mean, it would be one thing if Sliver of Straws gave them the mission, find the iterators, fix the iterators. I think the Saint is supposed to remove everything. That's tough. It's hard. There's probably millions and even, billions of creatures on whatever the Rainworld planet is. And it looks huge. Like bigger probably than an Earth. But I think the real Saint, the canonical Saint, and this goes along with other people saying, no, you should have ascended Moon and Five Pebbles. That should be the canonical ending. I think you're true. I think you're right. I think that's 100% true. But not only that, I should have ascended all of the creatures. Every single one of them. I think the Saint is a sweeper of this world, and they move everything into the Rubicon, and then the things in the Rubicon have to choose whether to ascend or not. And I think the unfortunate thing is a lot of those most aggressive beasts stay there because it feels comfortable. And they have this connection. Either they're not smart enough to realize that this is it, they can move on now, or they have this murderous side. I forget which one of the karmas it is, but it would explain it. A lot of the ones that are this aggressive are still there because they are that aggressive. And they have their connection to that one karma, which is like murder or aggression or rage or something like that. It reminds me a lot of the 7 deadly sins. If I'm being 100% honest, I honestly thought that this was like a hint to the 7 deadly sins. But there's only 5. So, well, technically 6, I think. Because people were saying that there's the 5 standard ones, there's 4 other ones that don't mean, or maybe haven't been assigned anything. I don't know if they mean anything or not. They might. And then there's the 10th one, which is ascension. And that actually does mean ascension. That is something. So we have 6. You just assign one of the other ones some random thing and you got 7. So I'm still holding out for possibility of 7 deadly sins. That being said, now let's get to the last part of the Saints cutscene. I'm going to call it a cutscene, even though technically I could control it the whole time, but let's be fair, it was going to like railroad me in a direction anyway. So it was a playable cutscene. Before I got off on another tangent, I think I've covered all the other comment stuff. I want to get to the final point of the Saints cutscene, and that is the moment with the Void Worm. The Void Worm comes to collect the Saint. They do not ignore the Saint. And they try to remove the Saint and sort them where they were supposed to go. Which tells me that the Saint can ascend. And they will ascend when they choose to. I don't think they are like the other echoes. And I think even the other echoes, if they chose to, they could ascend. But they would have to go through the process of building up their karma. I honestly do believe that the reason why the Saint has to move on in this world and isn't stuck in that same cycle of, where we woke up at the end of their ascension, if they get put back to the exact same place that they were originally, they should be back where Sliver of Straws were. They shouldn't wake up at the edge of 5 Pebbles domain, or what used to be 5 Pebbles domain. There's no reason for them to be there. Their cycle didn't start there. Our story started there. But why are they there? I think the Saint is also ascending the echoes. And I might be completely wrong about that, but I really don't think so. When we go back through, and if you were to play like a new game or New Game Plus, I'm sure that all of the echoes are still there. But I think canonically, the Saint is supposed to remove all of the echoes from the area, remove the iterators from the area, and remove all the creatures in the area. They hold them within themselves, and they march them down into the Rubicon and release them into the Rubicon. And then once they're released into the Rubicon, they go and cleanse themselves because they can't climb back up the way they were. But they can go through the Rubicon and then ascend back up from there, which is why the whole world of Ascension is flipped upside down. You're coming up and out of it, which is completely symbolic, instead of descending down into Ascension, which feels more permanent. Like there is no escape. Once you've gone far enough down, you don't just go down and then pop back up. They could have done that, and it would have been okay. I wouldn't have questioned it. But they didn't. They didn't do it. They had you swimming up and out of this weird, strange place. They have you ascending up and out, transcending yourself and back into the plane that is this weird cycle. And that's why you pop back in where you were. And I think you pop back in where you were because that's where our first echo was that we found. And that's why our karma is a 0. And I think that's why we also start with the 2 karma cycles, like our 2 karma levels. I think we start with that because we probably have our first karma, whatever that weird symbol is. I forget what that one means. We have that one, I'm sure. But then you start with the second karma because that's where you're locked into place because you found your first echo. You found your first karma and began your purpose of ascension. So I think what happens is you spawn back in, that glowy gold slugcat that you are, is put back into your physical body, which starts back over into your cycle, which was reserved where you found your first echo. But now you're emptied. So then the slugcat can then move on. So they'll move on past Five Pebbles and past Moon into another area where another iterator is, where other echoes are. And I'm sure they're drawn to it. At this point, they're so good at their job, I'm sure they kind of have a map of this world and sort of understand where they're going, the direction they're moving in. Probably a lot like a lawnmower. They're just going over and down and up and down and over, and they're just going to keep mowing the lawn all the way across this world. You know, at this point, I think they're probably that good. But in the beginning, I'm sure that they were like drawn to echoes. They have this sixth sense of where they could be. And what makes me say that is that every time you move into a new area, you get the blue blip and that weird sound. So there is a thing in their head that resonates with the echoes and their power. So short story made extremely long. I think the Saint is chasing down the echoes, purging them from the world, grabbing the iterators, moving them into Ascension, giving them the opportunity to move on if they choose to. And most of them, if not all of them, are going to choose to, because that's what their whole purpose is. Their whole life, their whole goal is this. Sliver of Straw has made the Saint, turn the Saint loose on this world. And the Saint's job is to purge everyone. And then in the very end, when it's all done, and all of the iterators, not just Five Pebbles and Moon, but all of them, and all of the echoes, and all of the creatures are gone. And this world, which was stuck in a perpetual cycle, is completely empty and bleak. I think in that moment, that's when the Saint will allow the Void Worm to reach out its tentacle and grab a hold of it, and finally place it where it belongs. So as much as I like the poeticness of this idea that the Saint is forever stuck in this cycle and they are the one creature that will never be able to ascend, I honestly believe that one day they will. At the very end, when all things are gone and the only thing left in the entire world, I would say universe, but that's probably not true either. I'm sure that this event is probably localized pretty tightly. I don't know if you can break the laws of nature for the entire universe using a tiny sphere, but I wouldn't put it past the universe to throw that too. But regardless, the Saint's not flying out into space, I don't think. I think when this world is empty, they are alone, and it is bleak, I think the Saint will move on. It's kind of a beautiful, happy ending. The happy ending I've been looking for in the entire game. As much as a lot of the other endings were kind of happy, I think this one is beautiful, and it shows that if they wanted to, I think that could be a definitive end to it all. It makes total sense, and I don't think I've broken any sort of rules or lore laws in the game. I think that's the end of Rainworld. The bringer of the end of the world has been released, and the Saint will continue their march. Now, whether or not that's true, I don't know. Again, that's just my theory. And even though we might not get a definitive answer about anything in Rainworld, I still think it's kind of interesting to have these conversations and have these theories. And because for me, that's one of the best things about playing games like Rainworld, that it doesn't come out and spell anything out for you, and we can all have a conversation and piece things together and believe what we want to believe. So, like always, thank you so much for watching this one. I know it probably got a little long, and I am sorry about that one. But remember to take care, and goodbye!